Hello and welcome to the Art of Costume Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I am Magistrate Spencer Williams. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello, Magistrate Williams. You would be the magistrate.
The local narc.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, today we're talking about Salem, and I could not be more excited because we have been working on this episode for a minute now. It feels like I've been watching 100 episodes a day, and I'm still not done, and yet here we are.
Going from The Witch to Salem was such a 180.
It was such a 180.
But it's great. I really enjoy this series. It's just so strange.
It's very strange, and I'm very excited. You know, you and I actually watched this together when we were just out of college, or you were still in college. I just finished.
I was still in college. So when we were living together, I think it must have been after Penny Dreadful ended.
Oh,
and I think you started watching it first, and you were like, hey, here's something we can replace.
Look, I needed something to tap the vein, and Salem just happened to be on Netflix at the time. And I was like, hey, I saw this really crazy thing. We should give this a go.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much how you presented it to me. You were like, this is wild, but the costumes are pretty. Do you want to watch it?
Yeah. And we'll get into it, but I remember the costumes were at the FIDM Museum, which is where I was working at the time. So I remember seeing the costumes and being like, I don't know what show that is, but I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But we'll get into it. Why don't I start us off with a summary?
Yes.
Today we are talking about Salem, which was created by Brannon Braga and Adam Simon. In this dark, fantastical retelling of 17th century Salem witch trials, the Essex Coven of Salem, led by Mary Sibley, seek vengeance for the past by turning the Puritans against themselves to complete their grand rite and create their own country. However, their plans are thrown off course when Mary's lost love, John Alden, returns to Salem. And that is probably the easiest way to understand Salem.
That's literally, as we said before, Puritan tomfoolery and
Puritan shenanigans. How the hell do they get anything done? We don't know.
I don't know either, but they looked good doing it in Salem. So let's meet our costume designer, Joseph Porro. You'll know his work from just so many things.
So many.
From Tombstone in 1993, Stargate in 1994, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
Hell yeah.
Were you a millennial if you didn't see that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we had our crushes on our favorite Power Rangers.
Yes.
That was with Rita Repulsa and Ivan Ooze.
Ooh, yes.
I if that were on TV right now, I would sit down and probably end this podcast.
Oh, same. I would also possibly do that for his next film, Independence Day.
Oh.
Godzilla, 1998. Stuart Little. I can't believe the same person who designed Salem designed Stuart Little.
That's wild.
This man has range, which you can also tell he has range if you watched any one of the 41 episodes of Ghost Whisperer.
Oh.
We also got Resident Evil Extinction, the Lizzie.
Whoa.
I knew you were gonna like that one. The Lizzie Borden Chronicles, 26 episodes of The Orville. And last, but certainly not least, season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which really established what a lot of these characters look like going into all the spin-offs going forward. Joseph Porro has had an incredible career. I've gone to meet him quite a couple times, and he is certainly a designer. Just such a creative mind that there's just, no one like him is all I would say. And having a range of working from Stuart Little to Resident Evil to Salem, it's actually quite insane. I don't That's insane.
And while we're still reeling from that list of credits, let's take a little break and then jump into Salem.
Hi, I'm Dan, who does all the magic behind the scenes. I wanted to say thank you, and if you want to support the show even farther, go to tpublic.com/user/theartofcostume, where you can buy a couple variations of our logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Also, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're an audio listener, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Now, back to the show.
Elizabeth, I am so excited to get into Salem, but first, you had just got back home because you were actually out here in LA. We had our LA Comic-Con panel, which was so much fun. I'm still reeling.
It was so good. The panelists were incredible. I was so nervous, but we got through it and it was great. And
you did a great job.
Thank you. So did you. I was like, when it all came together, I was like, oh my gosh, Spencer just knows how to put an event together.
Oh, thank you. It was so great. And big shout out to Tamsin Costello, Marcy Rector, Felipe Sanchez, who were on a panel. And of course, to Christine Wada, who really, it was half her idea of even doing this panel. So she wasn't able to be there, but she was such a supporter and met with us beforehand and met with the panelists to get all of our minds together. So it was a really great time. And so many people came out and showed up. We had close to a full room, actually. So lots of people showed up and had lots of questions after. And we took lots of great photos, which will be posted on our social media channels very, very soon, probably by the time you're listening to this episode. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And just a great kind of that was the first weekend in October. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That was.
it was, that took me a second. It was like a great, kind of start to spooky season and just seeing everyone in their cosplay and
Oh, yeah. And we got to run. Unfortunately, Elizabeth had a run around with me and our friend Natalie as I was dressed as Bob from Beetlejuice.
That was really fun.
It was fun. I didn't realize what am I trying to say? How much of the day it would take up. And, I really thought I was going to be able to do some shopping. And that was just not in the cards when I was taking pictures with children and grown adults for several hours. Yeah, it was fun.
We'll go to another convention and you can do some shopping then.
Well, you and I did do shopping after the panel.
Oh,
too.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Elizabeth got all the hookups on all the art, and
I did.
I got a cute sticker. But also what we got to do was Elizabeth slept on my couch for a couple days, and we got to watch Salem together. So we could talk about it while it was happening. And we still were both very much, at one point we were both like, I gotta go to bed. This is crazy.
I remember that moment because something wild just had happened.
Yeah, you're gonna have to be more specific when it comes to Salem.
Oh my gosh. So many people die in that show.
And come back.
That's true. Yeah.
Last week we were talking about The Witch, which, we thought was very much based to a point in realism. It was very much it was kind of that superstitious type of horror, which turns out to be real. Salem is just balls to the wall, crazy, campy, kooky. All of your crazy ideas that you dreamed of or had nightmares about came true in Salem. And I love it for that. It's just your crazy cousin just doing his absolute worst in this show.
It really feels like the fever dream of what the Puritans thought was happening back in the day, with all the embellishment to go along with it. And Joseph added quite a bit of embellishment to this show himself. Let's go behind the costumes. Joseph talked a little bit to the Hollywood Reporter about getting this job and how much he wanted it. He said, I told my agent oh, please get me in there for an interview. But they hired me not based on my ability to be historically accurate, but because of my high fashion background. They wanted me to bring an edgy look to the show.
Love that.
Nailed it. And
they're like, look, this show is not a period accurate witch trial show. We want you to go absolutely crazy with this.
Absolutely. And I have some of the concept art and costume illustrations up right now by Christian Cordella.
Oh, Christian's incredible.
Yeah. So good. I'm like, oh, this is how these costumes got greenlit. Okay.
Yeah.
Joseph also talked a little bit to the FIDM Museum, Spencer.
Oh. Yeah, I remember Joseph being in the museum doing press. I was there for a lot of those press previews. I wish I was watching the show as hard as I, love it now, because I could have asked my own questions.
Yes.
But that was the birth of baby Spencer, the Art of Costume podcaster.
Absolutely. And to FIDM, he talked a little bit about, this high fantasy concept they had and, budget constrictions. He said, when you're doing fantasy, you have to know what is correct. Then you make compromises based on your budget. Because this is about witches and fantasy, I'm going to bend the rules using fabrics that weren't available in the 17th century. And when a witch is having a dream sequence, I can do whatever I want. I love that. Like, they're witches. It's a dream sequence. It doesn't matter.
Also, like, when they're having a dream sequence, I'm like, the entire show is a dream sequence, honestly. It is a fever dream.
Absolutely. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how did he do this? Because the first season, costumes hit the ground running in terms of quality. And he talked a little bit more to FIDM about that, saying, this is the only period show where everything is made. It's very difficult to find to rent, even in Europe. I treated the show like a line of clothing. I wanted to do hand embroidery, but it was going to cost about $10,000 to do one dress in Hollywood. So we went to India. So
interesting.
He had a lot of these made in India, and they're gorgeous. Like, every single piece is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, every single costume, especially worn by Mary, Tituba, and Anne Hale, they were all very, very beautiful, which is why I was always laughing, because you will see Mary and Tituba walking through the town square, and everyone's trying to figure out who the witch is, and they'll straight burn like a blacksmith who was just sitting there doing his work.
And some crazy girl pointed at him.
Yeah, and then Mary will walk by in a full-on ball gown that you would see at the Met Gala. And people are like, who's the witch? I don't know. It could be anyone.
Yes. And even Joseph thought that maybe he was going a little over the top. He told the Hollywood Reporter, I kept expecting a call from the producers telling me to tone it down, but they just wanted more and more. Which I'm like, okay, everybody knew what this show was. Everyone involved knew what this show was.
Just keep going. More is more is more at Salem, which is true. And they keep that through line. It's not like it feels like they lost budget in season 2, and I'm guessing season 3. They just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper.
Oh, absolutely. And even with the most simple character, John Alden, played by Shane West, like, even his super simple, like, blue shirt with leather pants, those leather pants, detailed. His, like, leather jackets and jerkins, like, as fancy as they can get away with.
Yeah.
He talked about John's coat a little bit to the Hollywood Reporter, saying, John Alden wears leather that looks naturally aged. The coat has hand stitching all through it. There's a great leather guy out of LA who does primitive looking skin. It's aged and goes through dyeing that takes days just to get it to look like it's really beaten up and has been worn for 2 years. it's a labor-intensive process.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, John Alden's costumes are some of my favorites because they are so aged, and you could tell that he doesn't have a lot of clothes and he wears a lot of the same things. And I think Shane West was really great in this role as John Alden. He really is a great moral compass, I would say. Until we get to season 2, it starts to get a little hairy.
Yeah.
And even John Alden's simple costume from season 1, once we get to season 2, he becomes like a like a mega warrior all of a sudden.
Yeah. He goes through some tough times in season 2, but his look is greatly improved by a haircut.
Oh yeah, I actually preferred a long hair, but
really,
that's neither here nor there. But just so you all know who's listening, Elizabeth and I have a lot of like funny quips about this series. It's all with love. We love this.
Oh
this
yeah.
It's just wild.
So,
Two things can be true at the same time.
But I do love, like, as the series goes on, season 1, he has like a lot of layers. He like slowly like pares down over the years, and ending on this like fantastic leather jacket. That is his, like, he is down to business. Season 3, I know, Spencer, you're not there, but it is John Alden doing his best to do what is right, and like just like struggling day in and day out.
I'm going to finish it as soon as this podcast is done. I am trying. Elizabeth and I were talking behind the scenes. It's like I could be watching this show for what feels like a week straight, 3-4 episodes a night, and it feels like I'm not even making a dent. It keeps going.
Like, there's so much in this show, and I'm like, they either like needed another season, or they just needed to cut some of the storylines. One storyline I'm glad they did not cut, though, is the storyline of Countess Marburg, played by Lucy Lawless.
What a great character. I love her. But then also I hate her at the same time.
She looks fabulous.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at the costume budget right here on our screen. It's just even like the colors are so vibrant. This is so expensive.
It's so expensive. And she is just like the epitome of like 16th century aristocracy. Like, that is just, she's like, yes, I'm over here from Europe now with all my latest fashions.
Yeah.
I am here to show them off. You can all be impressed now.
Yeah, you could just tell that she's the OG. She's been doing this for what sounds like to me a very, 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 very
like
long time.
Thousands of years.
It sounded prehistoric, honestly.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed was just how, I already talked about how vibrant she was. But if you notice in season 2, she showed up and was super vibrant, and Mary Sibley, who we haven't got to yet, starts to get more faded and lose her color.
Yes.
It felt like to me like the Countess Marburg was just taking her power and everything. And also I wrote in my notes, the blood spout bathtubs, not cool. Those make me feel queasy as fuck in my bedroom. Cool. That was not okay.
Watching it because I'm like, oh, she's totally based off I think it was Elizabeth Bathory, who was like a 14th like some sort of noble woman in the 1400s who literally did that and then was put under house arrest.
What?
Yeah, look it up. It's very fascinating. She's one of the women that like Bram Stoker's Dracula, he based his Dracula off of. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, that's so true, because she's definitely like, she's there to assert herself, because she's been waiting to bring little baby devil to the world for a long time, and she definitely feels like it's her right to be the woman in charge, not Mary's, and she is just there to make her mark.
Honestly, you could have it, Countess Marburg. Salem is not a great town to live in. So like in season 1, remember when Cotton's girlfriend, Gloriana, she was so devastated about being exiled. And I was like, girl, get on that car and let's go. Like, I couldn't leave this town sooner.
She's also like bummed that her boyfriend didn't stand up for her. I would be too.
Well, I have a lot to say about Cotton Mather.
Okay.
I think he sucks. I think he is the Victor Frankenstein of Penny Dreadful in Salem. I just can't stand that guy. And also, I think he looks like a certain presidential candidate that's currently running for president.
That aside, you'll like season 3. I do want to point out, though, the Countess's all silver look.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the ones in, I believe it's season 2, where I was just like jaw on the floor. Like, this is what we watch Salem for.
Yeah, everything's incredibly exquisite. The amount of detail, I still don't understand how the show was made because like there's no way it had like a huge audience,
right?
But you would think that the costume budget must have been incredible.
Like, there are some TV shows where I just want a book about the making of it, and I want to hear from everybody because I just don't understand. This was incredible.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how it got made.
Yeah, it's too good. It's too good for its own good.
Speaking about too good for their own good, we have Mercy Lewis.
Oh gosh. Oh, this poor girl.
I couldn't decide whether I loved her or hated her, but she definitely goes through a story progression that is just fully reflected in her costumes.
You want to talk about a character arc? It's Mercy Lewis. I mean, she goes from being, I think this actress, Elise, should have been nominated for some sort of Emmy because that first season where she's chained up and
oh my gosh,
walked around in the yard like a dog. And then season 2, she's set on fire and then she becomes super hot again. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
And it's literally like rags to riches. I won't spoil for you what happens to Mercy in season 3.
Knowing how this show goes, she probably goes to space or something and starts her own witch colony out there. Just anything could happen.
Not quite. But I do love she starts in rags. Like, she is just not well dressed, mostly because the witches are just possessing her and making her do crazy things.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, I couldn't fit a picture of her burnt on here. But she goes through
barbecued look.
She goes through her barbecued look, which I wish I could have found something about the prosthetics for that, because that was wild and very excellent. But then, when she gets with the Countess, I love how she takes on this just very girlish look about her. Because it's that's kind of just what she wants. She just wants to be a girl. Mm-hmm. She just wants to have nice things and not be abused by her family or society. And one thing I will let loose about season 3, she becomes the madam of a Salem's new pleasure house. And yes, Spencer, season 3 is wild.
It sounds like things work out for Salem after all.
Season 3 is wild. I can't wait for you to see this because it was such a good between Joseph Porro and the set designer and the lighting for her business. It just all fits together beautifully. It's all red and it just it's visually stunning.
Yeah, I see a picture right here and it looks really, really incredible. And she just looks so polished and put together and finally at a place of power. Going back to where she started in season 1, I actually wrote in my notes, I was going to commend the costume team from Marcy's first 2 seasons because he really got to see the talent of the agers and dyers when it came to Mercy. Did I say Marcy earlier?
You did say Marcy.
Sorry, Marcy. Mercy. you can really see the aging and dying because her stuff was really falling apart. And this was a character who was sleeping in like actual pits of death with
with dead bodies.
You could just smell like the decay on her costume in the first season. And also when she was sitting in her bed, essentially just rotting while she was possessed. And in season 2, you really get to see Mercy become like the Countess's doll a little bit. You know, like she kind of takes her on as a protege to a point and, you know, dresses her up and gets her together. So you kind of see like a lot of the Countess's over the topness in Mercy in season 2. And I'm excited to see season 3. I'm glad that she makes it. Yeah. And I'm glad that we get more Pleasure House scene because I just gotta say, this show, especially season 1, is what everyone was hoping House of the Dragon would be. Like, we were like, what happened to all the sex scenes? This show is just like every 5 minutes. It's like,
they're
what
like,
do you want to see next? Yeah, you want sex? We got you.
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
It's so much.
It's so true. Anyway, Mercy. She really comes into her own in season 3. No one's really telling her what to do. And I really love her gray and white look because that is her wedding gown.
Yeah.
They have the weirdest, most informal wedding ever. Although I feel like anyone who's married in Salem doesn't actually get married. They're just like, oh, we dressed up nice and got married.
Oh, it's not real. Yeah, Cotton gets married at one point and he says, all right, well, I gotta go. And he walks away. I was like, cool.
Speaking of Cotton,
we gotta talk about Mrs. Mather, Anne Hale.
We do. We have Tamsin Merchant as Anne Hale. I just gotta say, I love Tamsin Merchant. She shows up in these wild roles and then just like goes with it.
I love Anne Hale. At first I was kind of like questionable on her, but I really like, I mean, I haven't seen season 3 yet, but so far I really like this journey she's been on. Elizabeth's making a face. That's not good. But like when we see her in the beginning of the series, she's as like conservative Puritan as it gets. You know, she's like stereotypical Puritan.
All black.
Very covered up, all black, the little hat. But then just like, I love seeing this transition of her starting to, you know, she starts again to the witchiness aspect of her. You know, this town is like also like very subtly horny all the time too, and you can just feel like the removal of layers as people start to have their night terrors, night sweats, and she starts to like change her colors a little bit. And then we get into like, you know, the later parts of season 2 and I'm guessing 3, and that's when you really see the witchy aspect where, by the way, being a witch in this town, no one seems to understand what witch fashion looks like because the witches will be walking around in giant hoods and cloaks and capes and no one will think twice. And Anne Hale does the same thing. She's like, all right, well, here's my
cape garb made of gauze. I'm like walking through the streets and just braid hems. Don't mind me.
I'm surprised she's not walking around with like a broomstick and a black cat too while she's at it.
Oh my gosh. It is so wild. Although I do have to say, like, one of her standout looks though, and I think a standout look from this series, just because like it's different, is her wedding gown.
I thought you would like it. I saw it just like last night actually, and I was like, ooh, I bet Elizabeth likes this one.
I was like the blue and the brown like really suit her
against that like golden orange red hair. It just really works.
It is a little awkward for the moment because it is gorgeous. I'm like, why are you getting married in the middle of the woods? Like, go to the church and show everybody your beautiful gown. But like, it is very like, it is awkward. They get married in a very awkward fashion, and she's literally like forcing him to fall in love with her.
Yeah.
So,
but then he's also like, sorry, gotta go. I have to go to an exorcism. Catch you later. TTYL.
Yeah. And then season 3, she kind of she begins to lean into the Puritan fashion, kind of the way Mary Sibley did though in season 1, where it's like it's black and white and subdued colors and very like conservative, but gorgeous details. Like the black embroidery on white trim, like beautiful. Like very I feel like her wardrobe for season 3 is really on point. And how the character, not so much. She's made some very questionable decisions in season 3. Spencer, let me know when you get all the way through season 3. I think you'll find the last 15 minutes particularly interesting.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'm so close. I think I'm probably on season 3, episode 1 by this point. So I'm very, very close. Even though I feel like I've been watching the show for a month now.
I know. We have another of our witches, Tituba, played by Ashley Madekwe, who she also goes through some transformations through this show. And I really like her wardrobe because I feel like it's the most varied.
Yeah, it's like I also really love her costumes. It's a lot of fun. I love the use of colors because she uses a lot of like those dark jewel tones.
Yeah.
But then also to me, hers like also like our screaming witch the whole time, which is like also hilarious to me because like there's literally a scene, and Elizabeth has one of these costumes on the screen. There's a scene where Mary Sibley's husband, who I don't remember his name now, something Sibley, George Sibley, he gets like thrown off his carriage. So he's just like stuck against a tree bleeding out. And Tituba goes and finds him, and she's wearing this blue hooded cloak, which is also like kind of fur on the trim. I don't know what it is, but it's like very, very unusual. Like you're not finding this at the Puritan fabric store down the street, you know? Like
I feel like she made this herself.
Yeah, and it's like a raspberry blue. And Tituba's just standing there over this bleeding man, and Increase Mather, who I think he is absolutely terrifying. This man makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And she's standing there in this electric blue robe. And he does not for a second think that Tituba is the witch that caused this. And I'm like, dude, you guys are killing me.
Increase is just an idiot on so many levels.
But yes, let's please string up the blacksmith.
And the poor midwife who's just trying to help people.
Jeez, seriously. But back to Tituba. I mean, lots of great costumes every single time. She was always, very put together. But also, like, she had like 2 different versions. She went from like her like being a very powerful witch, but then also to, she was a slave at the same time.
Yeah.
So you kind of saw like that aspect of she wasn't wearing like a typical uniform. It still was very much workwear, but there was always a witchy flair to it at the same time.
Absolutely. Talk about someone who always has a witchy flair, though.
Oh, man.
We have Mary Sibley, played by Janet Montgomery. Spencer.
Janet Montgomery, I love you. Please come on the podcast.
She's great. And I love Mary Sibley. And Mary Sibley has very 2 distinct like looks. I feel like one is the Puritan look. The other is the witch look. But let's just talk about like the Puritan look at first, especially when she's married to George.
Yeah, she's playing like a part, right? She is like the Lady of Salem. Essentially, she's married to the most powerful guy in a town, even though he can't talk. And she always looks very expensive, very put together. The thing with Mary, which I always struggle with, who I love this about her, is like she has a hard time keeping her witchiness like below the surface because she'll be wearing like a very put together outfit. But then in the next scene, she'll show up in like
a 3-tiered cloak.
Yeah, with a top hat and a giant feather. And like she has a hard time balancing it. But she always looks put together. And I love that about Mary Sibley. She's easily my favorite character, but that should not be a surprise to anyone.
I also love that she's like using as much of his money as possible on her wardrobe.
Oh yeah.
She's clearly like, my clothes are a form of revenge, especially because like she came from nothing. And I like whenever you see her when she had no powers, or in season 3 when she is maybe not at the height of her power.
Damn.
And
I could tell Elizabeth sitting on a secret.
so many. But she's just like, she is really just like pulled down to the level of like everyone else in Salem. Like all the commoners, pretty much. Like she just is immediately like dirty. Her clothes are like brown and gray and like look like they're about to fall apart at any second. And it's like, oh, no wonder you're spending all of his money.
Yeah, I mean, she really so much like walks around like she is the queen when she's just walking about Salem. But then when you see her in her witch costumes, I mean, she still remains the queen, actually. What am I saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
she's even more, she's just she's the witch queen in those moments.
Yeah, she demands respect when she's in her costumes.
Absolutely. And one part of Mary's wardrobe that I really appreciated was the jewelry. And Joseph talked to the Hollywood Reporter a little bit about it, saying she wears a ton of silver jewelry, vintage pieces from the 30s and 40s.
Oh.
And I'm like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there really was a lot of silver, wasn't there?
Oh yeah. I'm like, I feel like it's very witchy. Although one of my favorite witchy looks of hers, that like gold metallic corset with like the sheer gold robe. I was like, girl, get it. Yes.
Yeah. I also love another screen you shared where she's holding, the very dangerous apple in the very spooky woods. And like randomly, she has like this very vibrant green look that, kind of has to do with like the plague and whatnot. Like she just randomly has these pieces in her closet with like the most shocking, vibrant colors. And it's just like such a specific Joseph Porro Salem thing. Like there's no other show like this show. That's just the truth.
There isn't. And moments like that one with the green dress, I feel like there was like this is why I want a book, or I want more like a documentary, because I feel like there was a very strong creative vision among all the departments. Because like in this scene, she stands out with this, crazy cloak and like the metallic green, because she's standing in this like brown swamp behind like barren trees, but then further in the forest, there's just like these tiniest bits of like green that are helping enhance her look and the look of the apple. And I'm like, it just all works together beautifully.
It works. It reminds me when we talked about Bram Stoker's Dracula, which it's not fair to compare these two, but I just remember that Coppola quote of like, the costumes are the set. Like, I just feel like this show very much invested in the artisans are making it happen. Like that almost felt like the writing kind of came second or third, and it's just like, we want amazing costumes, amazing sets, hot actors, hot actresses, and we'll figure out the story later. We'll get there, but just like, witches, blood, violence, sex, good costumes. It was like a drug. They just kept going with it, and I loved it.
Which I think brings us to the end of Salem, because after talking about Mary Sibley, what else is there to talk about, really?
Really? I mean, that's it. She is the show. And it makes me crazy. I noticed at the beginning of your notes that you put together, the photo of Joseph Porro. He's standing there with Janet Montgomery. Yeah. That was taken at the ASU FIDM Museum party. I was there.
Yeah, and you didn't notice that? You didn't see her?
I was in the presence of Mary Sibley and Janet Montgomery, and I must have been doing something else. I was, obviously busy doing PR that night, but if I could just go back in time, maybe I would have had a chance.
Yeah, sure. But Spencer, all things considered, for the 2 seasons of Salem you have seen, what's your Stitch rating?
God, this is really hard, actually, because it's like one of those shows that are like, it's like not a good show, which makes it like almost like a perfect show. Like, so like my Stitch rating feels very like, it feels very tainted, you know? I'm gonna have to give it like a solid 3. That's just, I don't know.
I'm gonna be honest, that's where I landed as well. A solid 3 stitches. Like, the costumes are holding this together, literally. The costumes and the actors, I feel like, are what holds Salem together. Because this show, like, honestly, it sounds like we were saying this is a terrible show. It's not.
It's not.
It's just, it's wild, but you have so much fun watching it because it makes you think, because you're like, wait, what is happening? Hold on a second. Like, Spencer took notes. I feel like I need to rewatch this because I skipped quite a bit. And I'm just like, hold on, wait a second.
I took a lot of notes.
You
Just
took
of like
so many notes. Like,
It's just-
honestly, if I could like go back in time and have a podcast as this show was coming out and do like a podcast episode
episode
for
by
each episode by episode, we could talk for like 2 hours per episode.
Yeah, it's just,
I feel
it was like every episode is something else. You're not gonna, there's no filler episodes of this show.
No.
One episode, you're gonna see your favorite character get hanged, and then your other favorite character gets set on fire. But then these 2 characters are gonna hook up. But then a plague's gonna come out and wipe out the town. And then your favorite character that you saw get crushed to death last episode is going to show up as a ghost. And there's no blank spaces in this show. And that's why I love it, because it's just absolutely insane. But you're right. It's so much fun. There's never a dull moment in the show. But by the end of it, after a long night of binging it, you're going to sit there sweaty and you're just going to be like, I need to lay down. It was a lot. Oh man. Well, yeah, this is a lot of fun. I'm really glad we watched it, and I'm excited to play our favorite game, which actually feels quite impossible.
Oh yeah. But we must pick our 1 costumes to rule them all, Spencer.
Hit it, Daniel.
The 1 costume to rule them all.
Okay. Elizabeth, I know what my 1 costume is because it's the costume that actually made me laugh the hardest. It's in like season 1. This is at the height of people are being burned as witches every other day. Your grandma, your next door neighbor, your baby cousin,
Your blacksmith.
yeah, like all it takes is just like impress Mather to just give you a dirty look and you're done. And somehow Mary Sibley just walks by unscathed the entire time. So I had to shout out her look that she's wearing, where she's wearing a top hat and all the feathers and this very elaborate black coat, because to me, I felt like all she was missing was a sign that says I am the witch, and it would have been complete, because it's just so obvious and she looks so good for no reason.
One thing I'm realizing I left out is Joseph Porro. He was like, we're not concerned about period accurate hairstyles.
Yeah. What?
And that is just, you can see that so clearly in this look. Like, and this is so you. Like, this could be your Halloween costume, Spencer. And it's so wild because this is a moment where she's also accusing people of being witches.
Right. That's the part that makes me crazy. She should be like, well, obviously she's the witch. I'm like, really? the person cooking bread over there is being told she's the witch by the lady in the slash.
With the perfect curls tumbling down her cloak. Like, and she looks like glossy and shiny, and like her feathers, like the plumage is real.
She's wearing a top hat worn by the guitarist from Guns N' Roses.
Yes!
Like, it's just like, come on, guys.
It is so wild. And I feel like my one costume to rule them all is kind of equally wild.
Mhm.
She's not quite as like parading around Salem in this, but it is like her season 1, I believe it's the finale dress that
Yeah.
just has this beautiful silver spider web
Ooh, yeah.
stomacher.
Which should be a red flag to anyone in Salem, by the way.
Yes. And then she also has all these tiny little like silver fly embellishments all over these gigantic puff sleeves. She just has these huge silver like chains dangling from her neck. And she's just like, yes, we're resurrecting Satan. Here we go.
Yeah. And the people of Salem think that's just her grocery shopping
Yes.
costume.
Yes.
It is a really good choice. Like that, by that point of the season, it's everything you just kind of goes over your head at this point. You're like, yeah, that's a great costume.
Yeah.
But like when you actually stop and look at it, the embellishments that you were talking about, the spider
Wild.
web, it's wild. And I love it for that.
It's the gown is literally covered in tiny silver flies.
I just love this show.
Unfortunately,
Oh, man.
that is the end of the wild Puritan world of Salem. If you would like to let us know what your one costume to rule them all is, please hit us up at theartofcostume@gmail.com. And we forgot to mention, if you want to see these incredible looks, you can go to youtube.com/@theartofcostume.
Yeah, you need a visual guide for Salem. You need us to hold your hand and show you the fly embellishments or the spider webs or the top hat. You got to see it for yourself. And before I let everyone know what we're watching next week, I also want to point out, of course, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, but we also have a new Discord channel where you could chat with other listeners of the show, talk about your one costume rule them all. You could even submit interview questions for our upcoming interviews, which I could say that there's actually quite a few. Wink, wink. So yeah, come connect with your costume nerd community. We'd love to have you there. So Elizabeth, what we're talking about next week, I'm very excited about. It is The Witches. Elizabeth was just here on my couch and she watched it with me. It was her first time. Are you excited to talk about it?
I am so excited. This was equally as wild as Salem, but in a completely different way. And like, I'm sorry, anytime I get to talk about Angelica Houston, like I'll take that chance.
Oh, she is absolutely incredible in this film. I'm sure you've all hopefully have seen this film at this point. It is a classic.
And don't get confused with the remake if you're looking for.
We're not doing an Anne Hathaway film. I'm very sorry. We got to pay tribute to the original Angelica Houston. I can't wait to talk about it. It is a wild ride. Elizabeth, this was a lot of fun. I'm so glad that we finally got to talk about Salem after, what, has it been almost 8 years?
Right.
Man. We cannot wait to talk to you next week, my fellow coven of costume nerd witches.
Everyone have a great week.